What if the person you trust the most is hiding a dark secret that could destroy everything you've ever known? A mother's love is tested when she discovers the shocking truth about her son's fiancée, and now she must decide to protect her son from the woman he loves or risk losing him forever. What will happen when the truth comes to light? This is a story of betrayal, trust, and the ultimate fight for a future that no one saw coming. Stay tuned to find out, because the real danger is only just beginning. Before dive in, let us know. From where you are watching, we love to know your thoughts. Stay tuned, you won't believe what happens next. In the heart of the city, hidden away in a mansion that seemed to touch the sky, lived Isabella Montgomery. Her name was synonymous with power, wealth, and influence. At 50, Isabella had sculpted an empire from the ground up, earning respect and admiration from the world's most elite circles. She was a woman who commanded attention whenever she entered a room, not just because of her wealth, but because of her intellect and her unshakable composure. But behind the regal facade, Isabella carried a weight few could understand, the weight of protecting her only son, Adrian. Adrian Montgomery was everything to her. He wasn't just the heir to the vast Montgomery fortune. He was her heartbeat, her pride, and her future. At 27, Adrian had the world at his feet. He was handsome, intelligent, and compassionate. He'd grown up under Isabella's watchful eye, absorbing the lessons of leadership and responsibility that came with being born into such an illustrious family. Isabella had always made sure that Adrian understood the values of hard work and kindness, never letting him be consumed by the shallow world of privilege. Yet despite all her efforts, Isabella couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Adrian had recently become engaged to Charlotte, the perfect woman, it seemed. Beautiful, charming, and utterly captivating, Charlotte was everything any mother would hope for in a daughter-in-law. On the surface, the engagement was a fairy tale come true, but Isabella wasn't convinced. There was a nagging suspicion that Charlotte wasn't as perfect as she appeared. Isabella spent sleepless nights wrestling with the growing unease in her heart. She knew she had to trust her instincts. She had always been able to read people, to see through the masks they wore. But Charlotte, with her sweet smile and flawless demeanor, was a puzzle. Isabella couldn't figure her out. There were whispers, subtle things that didn't quite add up. Why did Charlotte avoid discussing her past? Why was she so eager to blend in with the family without revealing much about her own life? There was an odd familiarity with the family's business dealings, an unspoken understanding of the Montgomery legacy that made Isabella question Charlotte's true intentions. It was during one of the many high-profile events that the Montgomerys hosted in their grand ballroom that Isabella decided to investigate further. The night was young, the chandeliers sparkling like diamonds, and the guests mingled with glasses of champagne in hand. But as Isabella stood in the corner, watching her son laugh and joke with Charlotte, a cold shiver ran down her spine. What if the thought that had been creeping into her mind for weeks? What if Charlotte was after more than Adrian's love? What if she wanted his wealth, his status, the very empire he was destined to inherit? The question weighed heavily on her heart. Her maternal instinct screamed at her to protect Adrian, to shield him from the world's dangers, even from the woman he was about to marry. As she stared across the room at Charlotte, who was charming the guests with her wit, Isabella's gaze turned cold. She had to find out the truth, no matter the cost. But in doing so, Isabella knew she was standing on the edge of something that could shatter the perfect life she had built for her family. With a heavy heart, she made a decision. The investigation would begin. And in the process, Isabella knew she was risking everything, including her relationship with her son. As she turned to walk away, her mind raced. What if the truth was worse than she feared? And what if, by uncovering it, she lost Adrian forever? Days turned into weeks, and Isabella's growing unease became an ever-present shadow that loomed over her. Every conversation with Charlotte felt like a performance, one that Isabella could no longer endure. Charlotte was always polite, always charming, but there was a certain coldness in her eyes, a guardedness that Isabella couldn't ignore. It was subtle but unmistakable, like a mask that never quite fit right. But it wasn't just the woman's demeanor that bothered Isabella. It was the gnawing sense that something was being hidden from her. As the wedding date approached, Isabella's suspicions deepened. She had always prided herself on being perceptive, able to read people like open books. But Charlotte? Charlotte was different. She was an enigma. Isabella watched her from afar. Noting the way Charlotte sidestepped questions about her childhood, her family, and her past, it was as if she didn't want anyone to peek behind the curtain. But why? And then came the small, unsettling incidents, those fleeting moments that seemed like nothing at first, but when strung together, painted a picture Isabella couldn't ignore. Charlotte was always asking too many questions about the family business, particularly the private dealings that were meant to stay behind closed doors. She seemed to know things about the Montgomery legacy that no outsider should. The same outsider, who had come from a modest background, whose family Isabella had never even heard of before. Isabella's unease shifted from suspicion to certainty. There was something sinister beneath the surface, and she could feel it tightening like a noose around her family's neck. What was Charlotte's real agenda? Was she using Adrian's love as a stepping stone to something far more dangerous? Isabella couldn't wait any longer. She turned to Roger, the private investigator who had helped her in the past with discreet matters. He was trusted, efficient, and had a reputation for digging up secrets buried deep. She briefed him quickly, her voice low, barely above a whisper. "I need you to find out everything you can about Charlotte," she said, the weight of her words heavy with urgency. "Her past, her connections, I want to know everything." Roger nodded solemnly, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I'll get to work right away," he promised. But as the investigation progressed, Isabella found herself sinking deeper into a pit of dread. Roger's reports came in with unsettling frequency, each one revealing more about Charlotte's hidden life than Isabella could have ever anticipated. Charlotte's background wasn't just ordinary, it was tangled in a world Isabella had hoped never to touch. She had connections to shady businessmen, to underworld figures involved in money laundering and illegal financial dealings. Isabella felt the color drain from her face as she read through the details, and the most terrifying part, Charlotte had been involved in a blackmail scheme that threatened the very foundation of Adrian's reputation. It wasn't just about wealth anymore, it was about power, control, and manipulation. The more Isabella uncovered, the more she realized that her son's fiancé wasn't just hiding her past, she was using it as leverage. Every night, Isabella's mind raced with the horrifying realization: if Charlotte married Adrian, everything they had worked for would be at risk. The family's legacy, their business, and Adrian's future, all of it, could be destroyed by a woman who was playing a dangerous game. But how could she warn Adrian? How could she shatter his vision of the woman he loved without losing him? Forever? She watched as he became more enamored with Charlotte, his eyes glowing with hope and excitement. Adrian was in love, and no matter how much Isabella hated the woman he was about to marry, she knew she had to tread carefully. But the deeper Isabella dug, the harder it became to keep her suspicions buried. She had to make a choice: expose Charlotte and risk everything, or keep silent and allow the web of lies to tighten around them all. One evening, after another string of unsettling revelations, Isabella could no longer stay silent. She tried to reach out to Adrian, but he was distant, consumed by wedding plans and his growing affection for Charlotte. As Isabella sat alone in the grand study, the realization hit her hard: if she didn't act now, it would be too late. And just then, Adrian entered the room, his eyes filled with excitement. "Mom," he said, his voice filled with warmth, "Charlotte and I have been talking about the wedding plans. What do you think about the mansion for the ceremony?" Isabella froze. The walls she had carefully built between her son and the truth were crumbling. The lies, the fear, and the deception, she couldn't protect Adrian from this forever. Her heart beat loudly in her chest as she struggled to keep her emotions in check. This was her moment. The truth had to come out. But as she opened her mouth to speak, the phone rang. It was Roger. "Isabella, we need to talk. It's urgent." The world seemed to stop as Isabella's stomach churned. She knew that what he was about to say would change everything. Would it be the final piece of the puzzle, or the last nail in the coffin? The phone call from Roger lingered in Isabella's mind like a heavy fog, clouding her thoughts as she tried to focus on anything else. She couldn't shake the dread that had settled deep within her. The revelations about Charlotte had been far more sinister than she ever could have imagined, and now she was being pulled deeper into a web of deceit that threatened to tear apart everything she had worked for. But even in the midst of the chaos, Isabella felt a flicker of hope, a sense that the truth, no matter how painful, might offer a way out. The days that followed were a blur. Isabella spent every waking moment immersed in the details Roger had uncovered, reading and rereading the reports, each one worse than the last. She felt herself sinking into a place of despair, where every path seemed to lead to more destruction. Adrian was so in love with Charlotte, so convinced that she was the perfect match for him. The thought of tearing that world apart was unbearable. Yet Isabella knew it was the only way to protect her son. But then something unexpected happened. It was a quiet evening when Adrian came to her with a look of frustration etched on his face, a weariness in his eyes that she hadn't seen before. He sat across from her, his hands gripping the arms of the chair tightly. The sparkle that had once been in his eyes was dimming, and Isabella's heart ached at the sight. "Mom, something's not right," Adrian confessed, his voice low, almost defeated. "I don't know what it is, but I feel like Charlotte's changing. She's been distant lately, like she's hiding something from me, and I don't know what to do. I've tried to talk to her, but she won't open up." Isabella's breath caught in her throat. This was the opening she had been waiting for. The moment when the truth could finally come out, when Adrian might begin to see the woman he was about to marry for who she truly was. But even as she prepared to speak, she hesitated. Would telling him everything now destroy him? Would it push him away forever? For a moment they sat in silence, the weight of their unspoken thoughts hanging in the air between them. Isabella's heart was torn. She had always protected Adrian, always put his happiness above everything else. But this time she had to make a choice: protect him from the truth or expose the danger lurking beneath Charlotte's perfect facade. Finally, Isabella found her voice. "Adrian, listen to me," she said softly, her words careful, measured. "I've had my suspicions about Charlotte for some time now. There's something about her that doesn't sit right with me. I've been doing some digging and I found things ... Things you need to know." Adrian's face paled. "What? Do you mean, what kind of things?" Isabella took a deep breath. "I know it's hard to hear, but Charlotte has a past, one that she's kept hidden from you. And it's not just a normal past. There are connections to people and things that could ruin everything you've worked for." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "You're scaring me, Mom." Isabella held up her hand, trying to calm him. "I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to protect you. I've been working with Roger, and the things we've uncovered are dangerous. Charlotte isn't who she says she is." The tension in the room thickened, and Adrian's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "Mom, you don't know what you're talking about. Charlotte's been nothing but kind to me. She's perfect." Isabella's voice quivered with emotion as she continued. "Adrian, I love you, and I would never want to hurt you. But sometimes the hardest things are the ones we need to hear. I've been protecting you from the truth because I didn't want to hurt you. But I can't stay silent anymore. Charlotte has ties to people who are involved in illegal activities, things that could destroy us all." Adrian stood up abruptly, his face flushed with anger. "I can't believe you're saying this. You don't know her like I do. You're just trying to control me." Isabella felt the sharp sting of his words, but she didn't back down. "I'm not trying to control you, Adrian. I'm trying to save you. You have to trust me. Charlotte's not who you think she is. Please, don't let your love for her blind you to the truth." There was a long silence as Adrian's anger seemed to dissipate, replaced by a growing uncertainty. His eyes flickered with doubt, the realization that perhaps his mother wasn't wrong slowly sinking in. But even as the seeds of doubt were planted in his mind, Isabella knew that the truth would hurt him in ways she couldn't imagine. She could see the conflict in his eyes, the love for Charlotte warring with the growing suspicion that maybe Just maybe Isabella was telling the truth. Before Adrian could respond, the doorbell rang, and Isabella's heart skipped a beat. She knew it was Roger. The moment of reckoning was about to come. What new piece of information would he bring? Was this the confirmation they needed to expose Charlotte for who she truly was? With Adrian still standing, lost in his thoughts, Isabella excused herself and went to answer the door. As she opened it, Roger's face was grim. He didn't need to say a word. The look in his eyes told Isabella everything she needed to know. This was the turning point. Everything they had feared was about to come to light, and there was no turning back. Isabella opened the door to Roger, her heart pounding. His grim expression spoke volumes before he even said a word. The file in. His hand was thick, heavy with information that could shatter her son's world. She motioned for him to come inside, her breath shallow with anticipation. Adrian had already begun pacing restlessly in the living room, his face clouded with the internal battle between doubt and denial. Roger stepped into the room and without wasting any time, he handed Isabella the file. She opened it slowly, her hands trembling as she scanned the documents, the reality of what she was about to uncover hitting her like a tidal wave. Inside the folder were photographs, emails, and financial records, each piece a devastating confirmation of the worst fears she had harbored. Charlotte's past was far darker than Isabella could have imagined. She wasn't just a woman with questionable connections, she was deeply embedded in a criminal network that stretched far beyond the realms of mere financial misconduct. Charlotte had been involved in money laundering schemes that funneled millions into illegal businesses, and her connections to corrupt politicians and businessmen were far-reaching. But the worst revelation came when Isabella discovered that Charlotte had been blackmailing a powerful magnate, one with ties to the very business empires that the Montgomery family worked with. Isabella felt the blood drain from her face as she absorbed the truth. This wasn't just about wealth or manipulation, it was a dangerous game that could tear apart Adrian's future and reputation. If this secret was exposed, not only would their family's empire be at risk, but Adrian's name would be tarnished forever. Isabella's worst nightmare had come true. Charlotte was not the woman she appeared to be. She was a master manipulator, willing to sacrifice anything to climb to the top, and Adrian was unknowingly her pawn. Turning to Roger, Isabella's voice cracked. What do I do now? How can I protect Adrian from this? Her heart felt heavy, as if the weight of the world was pressing down on her. Roger's gaze softened. You have to confront her, Isabella. You have to make sure she can't destroy everything you've worked for. And you need to do it before it's too late. If Adrian marries her, the damage will be irreversible. The tension in the room was suffocating as Isabella processed Roger's words. She felt like a mother caught in the eye of a storm. To save her son, she had to destroy the love he held so dear. But could she do it? Could she rip the woman out of his life and risk losing her son forever? As Isabella turned to face Adrian, she saw the anguish in his eyes. He was no longer the confident, hopeful young man he once was. His expression had shifted, torn between his loyalty to Charlotte and the growing doubts that Isabella had planted. He knew something was wrong, he just didn't know how deep the betrayal ran. Adrian, Isabella said, her voice barely above a whisper, you need to know the truth. I can't protect you from this any longer. You're about to marry a woman who isn't who you think she is. Charlotte is tangled in a web of lies and corruption, and I've seen the proof with my own eyes. Adrian recoiled, his eyes widening in disbelief. What are you talking about? You're trying to tear us apart, Mom. You're accusing her without any real proof. You don't understand. I do understand, Adrian, Isabella replied, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. I understand that I can't stand by and watch you destroy your life. You're not just marrying a woman. You're marrying into a dangerous world. I have the proof. Charlotte has been blackmailing a powerful man, using her connection to manipulate the people around her. She's been using you, Adrian. The silence that followed was unbearable. Adrian's face drained of color, his expression shifting from disbelief to a dawning horror. His mouth opened and closed, struggling to find the words. The woman he had loved, The woman he was about to spend his life with had deceived him in ways he couldn't even fathom. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Adrian's voice cracked with emotion. His heart was breaking, and he didn't know who to trust anymore. The woman he thought he knew, the woman who had seemed perfect in every way, was now a stranger in his eyes. Isabella's heart ached as she looked at her son. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to break your heart. But you're my son, and I would do anything to protect you. Adrian fell silent, tears welling up in his eyes. He turned away from Isabella as if trying to escape the painful reality she had just thrust upon him. His hands trembled as he gripped the edge of the table, the weight of the truth bearing down on him. I don't know what to do, he whispered. Isabella stepped forward, gently placing a hand on his shoulder. You have a choice, Adrian. You can choose to face this truth and make the right decision, or you can continue down a path that will destroy everything you've worked for. You have the strength to do this, but it's up to you. As Adrian stood there, the storm inside him raged. He was torn between the woman he loved and the mother who had always been his rock. The future he had dreamed of was now in ruins, and it was all because of one decision. But in that moment, something inside Adrian shifted. He wasn't just the heir to a fortune. He was a man, a son, and the weight of his family's legacy was heavier than any love or betrayal. He had to make a choice that would either restore his future or shatter it forever. The days that followed the confrontation were some of the most agonizing for Isabella. She watched as Adrian wrestled with the truth as his world collapsed around him. The man he had loved, trusted, and planned a future with had been an illusion. He was heartbroken, lost, and angry. And yet, as the days wore on, something remarkable began to happen. The weight of the betrayal, though unbearable, began to awaken something deep within Adrian. The more he reflected on his mother's words, the more he realized that his love for Charlotte had blinded him to the truth. He had been so consumed with the idea of perfection of a fairy tale life that he had failed to see the darkness lurking beneath the surface. Isabella never pushed him. She gave him space, letting him come to his own conclusions, all the while offering the quiet support only a mother could give. She knew that no amount of words could erase the pain Adrian was going through. But she also knew that the hardest choices often led to the greatest transformations. One evening, as the sun began to set and the sky painted itself in hues of pink and orange, Adrian walked into the study where Isabella sat, quietly reading. He stood in the doorway for a moment, his face still strained with the remnants of sorrow, but there was something different in his eyes now. A quiet resolve. Mom, Adrian began, his voice firm but laced with emotion, I've made my decision. Isabella looked up from the pages of her book, meeting his gaze. She had been waiting for this moment, waiting for him to find his strength, to rise from the ashes of this betrayal and face the future with courage. She put the book down and smiled softly at him. What have you decided? I'm ending things with Charlotte, Adrian said, his voice unwavering. I can't be with someone who has been hiding her true self from me. I've realized that my future is more important than the fantasy I created in my mind. And more importantly, it's about protecting the people I love, especially you. Isabella's heart swelled with pride as she stood up and walked over to him, wrapping her arms around him in a tight embrace. I am so proud of you, Adrian. This isn't easy, but you've made the right choice. The path of truth may be painful, but it's the only one that will bring you peace. Adrian pulled back slightly, looking into his mother's eyes. I never thought I could walk away from someone I loved, but I've realized now that love isn't about blind devotion. It's about trust, honesty, and respect. Charlotte didn't offer me that, and I need to be strong enough to let go. The words hung in the air, and for a moment Isabella saw her son in a new light. He was no longer the boy who had been enamored by the illusions of perfection. He was a man who had chosen integrity over convenience, strength over weakness. Isabella knew that this experience would shape him for the rest of his life. As Adrian took a deep breath, a sense of peace seemed to wash over him. He wasn't defeated by this betrayal. He was liberated from it. He had freed himself from the chains of an illusion that had threatened to steal his future. Now, standing on the edge of a new beginning, Adrian understood that his true strength lay not in holding on to a lie, but in having the courage to face the truth even when it hurt. And for Isabella, there was a bittersweet satisfaction in knowing that the bond between mother and son had been tested and strengthened in the most difficult of ways. She had feared losing Adrian, but instead she had gained a deeper understanding of the man he was becoming. In the days that followed, Adrian cut ties with Charlotte. The process was painful, but necessary. He learned that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that save us in the end. He sought solace in his family, in his work, and most importantly, in himself. He knew there would be moments of doubt, but he was stronger now, more resilient. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over their mansion, Isabella sat beside Adrian, feeling a sense of quiet triumph. She had always known that protecting him would require difficult sacrifices, but she had never imagined that this journey would lead to such a profound transformation for both of them. Isabella's voice broke the silence, her words carrying the weight of all the lessons she had learned throughout her life. Remember, Adrian, life isn't about avoiding the pain. It's about learning from it, growing stronger, and moving forward with the wisdom we gain along the way. You've learned something today that most people never understand: the importance of truth, of trusting your instincts, and above all, of loving yourself enough to make the hard choices. Adrian nodded, his heart now lighter, his path clearer. The love he had for Charlotte was gone, but in its place was a deeper, more profound love, a love for himself, for his future, and for the woman who had always been his rock. Isabella had shown him that the hardest battles are the ones we fight within ourselves, and the reward is always worth the fight. And so, as the days unfolded, Adrian took his first steps toward a future that was built on truth, strength, and the unbreakable bond between mother and son. His journey had only just begun, but with the lessons learned from the past, Adrian was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. Remember, no matter how tough the journey may seem, every challenge is an opportunity for growth. It's the struggles we face that shape us into the people we're destined to become. So don't let fear or doubt hold you back. Keep pushing forward, trust your instincts, and always choose the truth. If this story resonated with you, and you want more stories that inspire and empower you to overcome life's obstacles, hit that subscribe button and join our community. Together, we'll continue to rise above every challenge. Keep believing, keep growing, and always stay true to yourself. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.